How did one last train ride home turn into an unforgettable gay love story with a disabled soldier? Have you ever been so tired of your own life that you stopped noticing the world around you? And then one night, the world didn't let you look away? I almost didn't take that train. I almost called a car. I almost did 100 things that would have meant I never met him. But I took the last train home on a Thursday in November, and by the time it reached the end of the line, something in me had shifted that I'm still feeling today. I need to tell you this the right way, so just stay with me. The last train. The platform was almost empty at 11:40 p.m. That's the thing about the last train. It collects a specific kind of person, night shift workers, people coming back from things they don't want to talk about. People who missed the earlier ones because they were somewhere they couldn't leave, or somewhere they didn't want to leave, or somewhere they were waiting for something that never came. I was the third kind. I'd been at my brother's place, waiting for a conversation that didn't happen. He'd promised, not in those words, but in the specific way older brothers promise things, through implication and rescheduled plans, and we'll talk soon, that we'd finally talk about our dad, about what happened last spring, about the silence in our family that had taken on the weight of a physical thing. He fell asleep on the couch at 10. I let myself out. So I was standing on that platform with that particular hollow feeling of someone who has been emotionally prepared for something that didn't occur when I saw him. He was at the far end of the platform, near the accessible ramp, sitting in a wheelchair and looking at the departures board with the focused patience of someone who has learned to wait without performing patience. He had a duffel bag across his lap. He was wearing a jacket that had a specific quality to it, worn in the way that means someone has lived in it, not just worn it. The train arrived. I got on. I found a seat in the half-empty car, and then he wheeled in, and the car wasn't large, and the only spot with enough space for the chair was across the aisle from me. He positioned himself efficiently, locked the wheels, settled the bag on his lap, and looked out the window. I looked at him for probably 3 seconds longer than I should have. He turned and caught me. I looked away, felt my face do something I couldn't control. A beat of silence. Then, from across the aisle, in a voice that was low and even and somehow both tired and amused. Long night? I looked back. He was still looking out the window, but there was something at the corner of his mouth. Yeah, I said. You? Always, he said. That exchange, 7 words total, shouldn't have mattered, but something about the way he said always, the complete absence of self-pity in it, the way it landed like a fact rather than a complaint. I didn't know his name yet. I didn't know anything about him, but I know that in the 50 minutes of that train ride, something happened that I've spent months trying to understand. 50 minutes. His name was Ethan. I found this out 12 minutes in when the ticket inspector asked, and he said it in the same even voice. Ethan Cole. The inspector moved on. Ethan looked back out the window at the dark city passing. Ethan, I said, because apparently I'd decided we were talking now and hadn't fully consulted myself about it. He looked over. That slight thing at the corner of his mouth again. You don't have to make conversation, he said. I know people feel like they should. I sat with that for a moment. That's not why. Then why? I didn't have a clean answer. I don't know yet, I said. He studied me for a second. A direct, unhurried look, the kind that made me feel very clearly seen in a way that most people's eye contact doesn't accomplish. Then he nodded slightly, like I'd said something satisfactory. What happened to your night? He asked. I almost deflected. I had 3 versions of deflection ready. I was tired. It was nothing. Long story. Instead, I heard myself say, I went to talk to my brother about something, and we didn't actually talk about it. He nodded. Family thing. Yeah. Those are the worst, he said. The conversations that don't happen. They take up more space than the ones that do. I looked at him. How long have you thought about that? Since about the 4th year of not talking to my father, he said, completely matter of fact. I felt the sentence land somewhere specific in my chest. How many years is it now? 6, he said. He paused. Before you ask, it's not fixable. Some things aren't, and the sooner you make peace with that, the lighter you carry it. He looked at me. Is yours fixable? I thought about my brother asleep on the couch, about my dad, who was still alive and still present, and still utterly unreachable in the ways that counted. I don't know, I said. I keep trying. That's different, Ethan said quietly. That's worth something. The train went through a tunnel. The lights flickered once. When we came out the other side, the city had opened up. Less dense, more sky, and the car had gotten quieter around us. What happened to yours? I asked. Meaning his night. He glanced down at the chair, then back up. Not bitterly, just matter-of-factly, the way you gesture at context. Appointment. Follow-up from follow-up from follow-up. They like to check in on you. A pause. Make sure you're not whatever they're worried about. Are you? I asked. He looked at me directly. What? Whatever they're worried about. A long beat. Not tonight, he said. Something in those 2 words, something that told me tonight was specific, that not every night was the same answer. I didn't push, but I didn't look away either. What I learned, station by station. By the time we reached the 3rd stop, I knew this about Ethan Cole. He'd served 8 years. He'd been in a vehicle accident 18 months ago, IED on a road he'd driven 20 times before, the 21st time being the one that mattered. He told me this, not as trauma sharing, but as information delivery, the way someone summarizes a chapter they've already read and processed and don't need your reaction to. But I watched his hands while he talked. They were still on the duffel bag. Very still. The kind of still that is control, not calm. By the 4th stop, I knew he lived alone. Had been living alone since the accident, which had ended a relationship he mentioned briefly and without elaboration, except to say, she needed someone who was going to be the same person he'd always been. I understand that. I wanted to say something about that. I didn't. I filed it somewhere and kept listening. By the 5th stop, I'd told him more about myself than I'd told anyone in months. About my job, graphic design, freelance, the kind of work that sounds creative until you explain that most of it is corporate branding and you're slowly dying inside. About my apartment that I liked, but that felt increasingly like a space I was camping in rather than living in. About my dad and the spring, which I gave him the outline of. Illness, recovery, the complicated aftermath of a man who survived something and came out the other side somehow more distant than before. He listened the way he did everything, with complete, quiet attention. No filler responses, no premature comfort, just actual listening. You're a good storyteller, he said when I finished. I'm rambling to a stranger on a train, I said. That's what I said, he said. And I laughed. Actually laughed, the surprised kind, and he smiled. A full one this time, and it changed his face entirely, and I felt something in my chest do something I had been trying for approximately 2 years to stop feeling for anyone. After the train. My stop came up. I gathered my bag. I stood. I looked at him and felt the specific helplessness of a moment ending that you don't want to end. This is me, I said. Yeah, he said. I hesitated. I am not, I want to be clear about this, a person who does things like what I did next. I am cautious. I am private. I have been burned by leading with openness, and I have the specific scar tissue to prove it. I took a business card from my jacket pocket, an actual physical card, which I have approximately 12 of and hand out maybe twice a year. I put it on the duffel bag. In case your appointments get boring, I said. He looked at the card. He looked at me. Ethan, he said. His own name, like he was introducing himself properly this time. Seth, I said. The doors started their warning beep. Go, he said. But he'd picked up the card. I went. The messages he texted 4 days later. No preamble. Appointment was boring. I stared at my phone for a moment. I typed. Told you. You did. How's the brother situation? Unresolved. How are you? A pause. Longer than the others. Okay. Some days better than others. Today is middle. I didn't know what to do with today is middle. I'd never heard anyone describe their day that way, and I found it both precise and quietly devastating. Middle sounds hard, I wrote. Middle is survivable, he wrote back. That's what I keep telling myself. We texted for 3 weeks before he suggested coffee. He said it casually, offhandedly, the way someone suggests something they've been considering for longer than the casualness implies. I said yes before I'd finished reading the message. Coffee and then more. He was already there when I arrived. Of course, I'd learn he was always early. Another form of control, another way of being prepared for a world that had surprised him badly once, and that he wasn't willing to let surprise him again. He had 2 coffees. He'd ordered mine without asking, which he explained without apology by saying, "You seemed like an Americano." I was, in fact, exactly an Americano. That's either very observant or a lucky guess, I said. First one, he said. I sat down. The coffee shop was small and warm and smelled like the right things. Outside the window, November was doing its gray best, and Ethan Cole was looking at me across a small table with that direct, unhurried attention that I'd been thinking about for 3 weeks. "I don't do this," he said. "Coffee?" I said, reaching out, keeping the card. He looked at the coffee cup. I almost didn't text. "What made you?" He looked back up. "I kept thinking about what you said, on the train, about your brother, about how you keep trying even though you don't know if it's fixable." He paused. "I wanted to know if you'd tried again." "I have," I said. "We've talked twice. It's slow." "But you're doing it?" "Yeah." He nodded, like this was important data. "I called my father," he said. 2 weeks ago, first time in 6 years. He looked slightly away. That tell, when something costs him. "It didn't go the way I wanted. I'm sorry." "It went," he said. "That's something." He looked back at me. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." "I do," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Because we're the same kind of person," I said. "We hold things a long time, and then we find the one person on the last train who seems like they might actually understand, and we just talk." Something on his face. Something I recognized but couldn't quite name. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's about right." The thing I didn't say. We started meeting regularly, not by plan, by accumulated habit, which is the most honest way things actually develop. Coffee became occasional dinners. Dinners became evenings that ran long. At some point, we were talking 3 or 4 times a week, through texts and calls and afternoons in that same coffee shop. I want to be honest about something. I knew what I was feeling. I wasn't confused about it. I'm gay. I've known since I was 22. I'm reasonably acquainted with my own emotional landscape at this point. What I was confused about was what Ethan felt, and whether I had any right to hope it was anything close to what I felt, and whether risking the thing we had built was something I could survive getting wrong. Because this was the best thing in my life. This odd, quiet, serious, funny man who said middle instead of fine, and who picked up a business card, and who called his estranged father after a train conversation because something in it had moved something in him. This friendship was the warmest thing I'd walked toward in years. I wasn't going to gamble it carelessly. So I held it. For 4 months, I held it, and I got very good at compartmentalization, and I told myself that this was enough, actually. This was a full and real and meaningful thing just as it was. And then one Tuesday in March, I heard him through a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. The overheard truth. He was in the coffee shop bathroom when his phone rang, and he answered it, not realizing the door hadn't closed fully behind him. I wasn't trying to listen. I was looking at my phone, and then I wasn't, because I heard my name. "No, Seth. No, it's not like that." A pause, and then quieter. "That's the problem. It's very much like that, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how he feels. I don't want to assume, and I can't. Another pause. His voice dropped further. I had to be completely still to catch it. I can't be wrong about this one, Marcus. I can't lose this one. He's the first thing in 18 months that's felt like I want to still be here for what comes next. Silence. Yeah, he said. I know. I know. The water ran. The door opened properly. He came back to the table and picked up his coffee and looked at me, and I was doing everything in my power to look like someone who had been calmly reading his phone for the last 90 seconds. I don't know if he believed it. We sat together for another hour and talked about other things, and the whole time I was holding what I'd heard like something fragile, turning it over, understanding what it meant. He's the first thing in 18 months that felt like I want to still be here for what comes next. I understood what that sentence cost him to say. I understood what it meant, in the context of a man who'd had his entire life rearranged by one road on one morning, who'd lost a relationship and a body and a version of his future all at once, who said middle when people asked how he was, because some days that was the truth. And he'd said it about me. The climax I told him 2 days later. Not dramatically, not in a speech. I'd thought about speeches and discarded them because Ethan wasn't a speech kind of person, and neither really was I. We were at his apartment. I'd been there a handful of times by then, a spare, clean place that reflected him perfectly, functional and uncluttered and warmer than it looked at first, and we'd finished dinner and were sitting in the way we'd gotten comfortable sitting, close but not quite close enough, with a film on that neither of us was watching. I need to tell you something, I said. He looked over. His expression shifted slightly, not fearful, just alert. I overheard you on the phone on Tuesday. His face went very still. How much? Enough, I said. I wasn't trying to. The door was open. I'm sorry. A long silence. Seth. I'm not bringing it up to make it uncomfortable, I said. I'm bringing it up because I've been holding the same thing for 4 months, and I'm tired of holding it alone, and what you said. I stopped. Steadied. You don't have to lose this one. I don't want you to lose this one either. He looked at me. For a long time. His hands were still on his knees. I'm difficult, he said. I want you to know that before you, I'm not easy. I have bad nights. I have days when I need everything to be controlled and predictable, and I'm not always able to explain why. I have things I'm still working through that I don't have a timeline on. I know, I said. I'm telling you because it's not small. I know it's not small, I said. I'm telling you that I've seen the middle days, and I've seen the bad days, and I've seen the days when you called your father, and it didn't go right, and you still showed up for coffee, and I'm Ethan. I'm here for all of it. If you'll let me be. The room was very quiet. He reached over, slowly, and put his hand on mine, on the cushion between us. I kept your card in my wallet, he said. From the first night. I kept it for 4 days before I texted. I kept looking at it. He paused. I don't keep things. I travel light. I've had to. I know, I said softly. I kept yours, he said. Like that was the whole sentence. Like that was everything. I know, I said again. And this time, I turned my hand over and held his. Now it's been 7 months since that night in his apartment. I won't pretend it's been easy or simple, because that would be a different kind of story and not an honest one. There have been bad nights. His and mine. There have been weeks when his appointments cluster, and the weight of his rehabilitation is exhausting, and he goes quiet in a way I've learned to sit beside without trying to fix. There have been weeks when my family stuff rises up and I'm bad company, and he makes coffee the way I like it and doesn't ask me to talk until I'm ready. We've figured out how to be in each other's hard times. That's not a small thing. Most people never figure that out. He still says middle sometimes, but he says it to me now, and I say, okay, middle. I'm here for middle, and he looks at me with that look, that direct, unhurried look from the train, and something in him settles. I think about that last train a lot. How close I came to calling a car. How almost, is the most terrifying word in the English language when you apply it to the things that actually matter. I took the last train home, and the last train brought me to him. Should their story continue? Comment. Part 2 if you want more. Like if this made your heart race, subscribe for weekly gay romance stories. And tell me, what do you think about the question I asked at the beginning?